Well, hello guys. I'm actually here, well, I'm in Battery Park City right now, next to the piece of the Berlin Wall that's located here. If you didn't know that's here, that's probably because you didn't watch my video, you freak. You can watch it right here, there's your link. But I'm only here because we're using this as a little jump off, because I'm going to take a little trip today. You'll see where in a second. Before we go, Lucy, how are you? Wie geht's?
Sehr gut, danke.
Ja, ich heiße Tom. Ich komme aus Queens. Yeah. Anyways, the whole point of me speaking German is that we're going to Germany today, baby. We're going to Berlin, Germany, where the Berlin Wall actually originated. I'm going to tell you all that history. Is going to be pretty sick, pretty krank, as the Germans say. But before we go, guys, check out the Patreon, baby. That's really important. Helps fund these things. Keeps me from having to hawk, I don't know, Frankfurters and, Frankfurter pills. Is that what people are taking now for good skin or something? Also, too, please subscribe. That's a huge help, and also like the video. That keeps me, in the analytics, bumped up above all the, reaction videos. Before we go, Lucy, ready to do this? Should we just jump to Berlin? This is gonna be a pretty cool video. I'm excited about this. We're actually going to Berlin. We're not messing around. So, ready to do this?
Ja.
Yeah. Well.
Los geht's.
Los geht's. Hallo. Ich bin in Deutschland. Huh? Yep, I'm in Germany here. I'm in Berlin, Germany right now. This is going to be a little walk today. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this place, but I know a few things. I'm going to walk you around, show you the neighborhood, tell you some, I'll show you the city, I guess, some of it. Lucy, should we start this thing?
Ja, bitte.
Bitte. All right, let's do it. Los geht's. All right? Is that let's go?
Yes.
All right. I don't want to make my camera woman mad asking her too many questions. Well, anyways, we're walking through now Alexanderplatz. I don't know if you could tell by the guy playing pop music on his violin, but this is pretty much kind of like the Times Square area of Berlin. A lot of tourists, a lot of chain stores and things like that. But it's very centrally located. It's kind of like a hub. Right by me, we're walking by this thing. Hopefully, I don't get copyright stricken for this song here. But you're walking by the world clock. Actually, this world clock was actually put here in the 1960s. It's an art piece, and there's 148 different time zones, 148 different cities. Sorry, there are times put on this art piece. We're going to be walking under the S-Bahn track and heading over into the little square here as well. And then we're going to be walking a little bit. So Berlin, it was kind of started as a little town, an outpost, like in the 1200s. It was part of the Prussian Empire, so it's hard to imagine, but Germany really was just kind of like a confederation of a ton of different states and principalities. Different princes had their own thing going, and it was all kind of warring factions. And Germany as a country itself wasn't really united until later on. So I was saying too that the city is pretty old, and we're actually near what used to be the oldest area in Berlin. It's a little area called Nikolaiviertel, which is St. Nicholas was the church right near here. It's actually the oldest church in Berlin from 1230. And the area was bombed out during World War II, like a lot of the city. And it was rebuilt to kind of mimic what it used to look like. So just to give you an idea, what makes, I think, Berlin so interesting is that it's been kind of like reinvented so many different times because of what's happened here. Throughout history. It's been kind of beat up a little bit by history over time, and so pretty much all of Berlin was destroyed during World War II. It was bombed a total of 363 times is one of the numbers that I saw, and it was bombed by all the different allies. It was bombed by the British, the Americans, the Russians, and even the French bombed Berlin. All throughout World War II, there were air raid shelters everywhere, bomb shelters. There's one here actually in Alexanderplatz, one of the biggest. And it's called actually Alexanderplatz after Tsar Alexander, who visited this area, because I was telling you this is a very old area of Berlin, back when it was still almost like a smaller outpost. It didn't really start growing and exploding until the late 1800s, early 1900s, when its population started exponentially growing as Germany grew, and also after it unified. But this is where Tsar Alexander came and visited. The city gate, one of the city gates when Berlin was actually a walled city, was right near here. Anyways, we are also walking by the, right behind me, yeah, you got the TV tower, pretty cool. The Fernsehturm. Is that right, Lucy?
Ja, Fernsehturm.
Fernsehturm. So the Fernsehturm is the TV tower. This was actually built in 1969. It's the tallest structure in Germany. It's actually 1,207 feet, 363 meters. But it's the tallest, one of the tallest in Germany and one of the tallest in Europe. Just so you guys know where Berlin is situated in what used to be East Germany. So Germany was divided in two after World War II, right? The Potsdam Conference was where kind of the Allies all divided up and carved up Germany in 1945, and they decided that, you know, East Germany belongs to the Soviets, and then West Germany belongs to the Allies. But then within East Germany is Berlin. Berlin was also to be carved up. It served as kind of like a symbol of the whole country, and it was very important for the Allies to get a piece of it to kind of, you know, kind of be on equal footing with the Soviets. So they carved it up as well, and there were three zones on the Allied side, which was West Berlin, and then the East Berlin was the Soviets. But the whole city was in East Germany, which caused some problems. And I'll tell you guys about those in a second. Check it out, this to the left. Pretty cool, huh, Lucy? Rotes Rathaus. This was the city hall of what used to be East Berlin, is now all of Berlin City Hall is changed to Berlin City Hall after the unification of the city. Pretty cool little building. Then over here to my right, you have this statue there, that fountain, that is Neptune. That is the Roman god of water. And around him are four different women, scantily clad, of course. That's how statues were made in 1891. And each one of them represents a different river of the Prussian Empire. So the Prussian Empire is really what kind of was the like hub of what became the country of Germany. People forget that, I guess, Germany as a country is not a very, I guess, old concept. It didn't really start kind of idea of like this nationalism around Germany didn't start coming around until the mid-1800s. In fact, there was a failed revolution in 1848 around all of these principalities and whatnot. And basically what happened was they kind of elected this board. They elected this like assembly, you know, like an elected, you know, Congress kind of thing. And that Congress was then to give power to the king. And a bunch of the principalities signed on, but the most powerful ones, including Prussia, did not. So it was stamped down, and a lot of those people who were part of that revolution were persecuted. And a lot of people hauled ass and went over to, you know, the United States, for example. And they went to places like New York City. A lot of New York Germans in the mid-1800s, they were actually the other big immigrant group in the mid-1800s, along with the Irish. You guys know that the Irish were hanging out in New York in the mid-1800s, a lot of them from the potato famine, the Irish hunger. Anyways, we're walking over to Unter den Linden. And also, too, before we go, behind me, you can kind of see this church over there in the distance. That's the Marienkirche, right, Lucy? That's pretty... Marienkirche, sorry. That means Mary Church. And it's also another really old church from the 1200s as well. Yeah, a lot of churches in Europe, go figure. But there's a statue outside of that church, really cool statue of a man named Martin Luther. Martin Luther, very important German. He started what's called the Protestant Reformation in 1517, posting the 95 Theses on the door of a church in Wittenberg, Germany. What he had intended to be kind of a protest ended up evolving into a complete new movement and new church completely evolving and coming out of it. It's a beautiful day, huh? How are you doing, Lucy?
Super.
Super? Super gut?
Super geil.
Super geil. So now we're just walking down to the riverside. I'm going to walk down by the River Spree, which is the main river going through Berlin. And we're going to head over towards, well, what is the beginning, or before Unter den Linden, which I was telling you about before. You can see the river here in the background. Very pretty, very nice. We're going off-road a little bit. You okay?
Yeah.
All right. Over here, you're going to have a couple well, first of all, you have here the Dom. This is the Berliner Dom. This is the church. It's actually the largest Protestant church in Germany. Very pretty. Also partly destroyed during World War II. Built in the early 1900s as well. You can see the architecture, very nice Beaux-Arts architecture. And that over there is what they call Museum Island. It's where all the few museums on that little island there next to the river. A little area where you can picnic, hang out. And then over here to the right, you're going to see something interesting I'm going to talk about here in a second. Oh, and also this big building here, which you didn't see the front. This is kind of the back. It's a little more modern looking. The other side is what they call the Schloss. The Schloss was a palace that was built there, and it actually was destroyed. But this guy kind of started like this movement in the early 2000s to rebuild the whole thing, and they just built it up and just built it back up from complete scratch to make it look like it used to. It's pretty cool. You can see in the background all the stuff we just saw. Pretty cool, right, Lucy?
Yeah.
Lucy's German. Another thing to keep in mind is we are in what used to be East Berlin. Because it's East, you got these two guys. I don't know if you recognize those guys. That's Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. In fact, both of them were graduates of the University of Berlin, which is today Humboldt University, which is also on Unter den Linden, which we'll see here in a second. Let's keep moving. This is the Liebknecht-Brücke. It was a Liebknecht-Brücke. He was a communist leader in the Weimar Republic. So the Weimar Republic, just so you guys know, was actually the predecessor to the Third Reich. So the Third Reich was Nazi Germany. You shouldn't say that too loud here. I don't want people. You actually can't really. You can't do like the salute and all that stuff here. You can't show the swastika. It's very, very regulated. They don't want anyone repeating that kind of stuff. But that came about in 1933. But before that was the Weimar Republic, which started in 1918. It was post-World War I. So it was like the attempt at a republic, attempt at a representative government and a constitution and all that, and it didn't really work out too well. It actually had like a little bit of a heyday in the 1920s. There was some, economic progress and what they called the golden 20s here. But then with the Depression and all the problems in the late 20s, early 30s, it set the stage for the rise of fascism here and the extremists on both sides. But obviously everyone knows that Hitler won out and fascism won out here. Yeah. Here to the left, look at this, Lucy. You have the Schloss I was telling you about. Pretty cool. And this is all down there. Going to be Unter den Linden. And then further down, you have Humboldt University. Humboldt University was the University of Berlin. Put that in some B-roll. That's where people like, Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels went. Also, Lucy's mom went there. Also, who else went there? Einstein went there. So did...
Yeah, my mother.
So yeah, Lucy's mother, who is Einstein. Lucy's mother is Einstein. And also Erwin Schrödinger, of Erwin Schrödinger's cats fame, the quantum mechanics guy, quantum physics guy. There's the Altes Museum. Okay, so now we are actually in front of the Humboldt University, which is right here. We're just a little further down Unter den Linden. Chill out, no big deal. We're not going too far. And then behind me is the university. Anyways, this is the law school here, and you also have a very important memorial here. Check it out. So this is the memorial to what happened in this plaza in front of this school. They actually had, in 1933, the Nazi, student group here burned thousands and thousands of books at night, and it was really like a dark kind of beginning to what ended up being the Third Reich until 1945. So it was a pretty terrible time here in Germany. People forget, in 1933. You also had, we'll talk about it a little later, but that's when the Reichstag was burned at the beginning of the year, and then it just slowly devolved. Then Hindenburg died and just allowed Hitler to kind of take the entire control of the German government, which we'll talk about once we get to there. But we're going to keep on moving down. Oh, and also behind me is the Staatsoper. How was that, Lucy?
Oper.
Staatsoper. It's an opera house, all right? That pink building. All right, let's keep moving. Okay, and look at that. We just made a quick jump to this area here, the most recognizable landmark probably in all of Berlin. This is the Brandenburg Gate. It was built in 1791, and it was kind of the beginning of the road to Brandenburg an der Havel, which was the capital of the Brandenburg Margraviate back in the day. It was built in 1791, and on top you have a quadriga, which is a chariot pulled by 4 horses, and that was actually taken by Napoleon, if you guys remember who he is. He's a really tiny guy who conquered most of Europe, but is pretty much remembered now for being very short and angry. But he took it from here, and he actually took it to Paris, kind of as like a spoils of war, and it was returned once he was beaten back down, and pretty cool. Behind me here is the Hotel Adlon, which is famous for Michael Jackson. He dangled a baby outside on the balcony, right? You remember that, Lucy?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool, right? So another thing to keep in mind is that this is where the actual wall, the actual Berlin Wall, was located on the other side of this gate. August 13, 1961, it was put up overnight, kind of sprung on people. And one of the big reasons it was put up was because everyone was leaving East Berlin and leaving East Germany through the Berlin border. They put up barbed wire initially, and then they turned it into an actual wall starting a few days later. But the wall was put up on the other side of here. And it's crazy to think, but people were like away on business. People were, commuting from one side to the other, and then overnight they weren't able to get to where they needed to go. And it actually wasn't a few years until West Berliners could actually go to East Berlin. So people were divided for years. Some people divided for even longer. And it looks like we can't get through here because they're building a new wall, it looks like. Looks like we're trapped here. We're trapped in East Berlin now. So I'm never going to do a tour in New York again, and I'm going to have to make a home here. Sorry. All right, well, I was going to go over to the Reichstag. Find out what's going on, and then I'll report back. Let's do it. Well, looks like there's going to be a procession, a military procession down the street here, and it's closed till 9 p.m., which kind of stinks. Sehr schlecht. And I was going to walk you guys over to the Reichstag, which is over here. It's actually the where the Bundesrat meets. And that's like the government pretty much meets there. And there's a big dome that was designed by Sir Norman Foster, very famous architect. But it was also, too, interestingly enough, it was burned down in 1933. It was mysteriously burned down. And that's actually what Hitler used initially to kind of start seizing power. In fact, when it burned down, he blamed the communists. He started rounding up people. And that was like the first step in his kind of like consolidation of power that eventually made him Der Führer. Right? I shouldn't say that too loud around here. Anyways, from here, I want to jump to something more current. We've been talking a lot about the history. I'll talk some more about it. But from here, we're going to jump to a cool neighborhood that kind of tells a story of the wall, of the development of Germany, of the development of Berlin. And you'll get to see something a little more day to day. What do you think of that, Lucy? Should we do that?
Yeah, bitte.
Bitte. Los geht's. Well, look at that. We're now in a different part of Berlin. We're in a different neighborhood. We're now in Kreuzberg, which translates to Cross Hill. This is actually in West Berlin, but right on the border of East Berlin, where the wall used to be. This area, a very Turkish neighborhood today. Also kind of a gentrified neighborhood. A lot of artists moved in here a little while back, and it's since kind of changed and been developed. I think we're going to walk around here now and show you another part of the city. Ready to go, Lucy? All right, let's go. Okay, there you can see it says Zentrum Kreuzberg. Central Kreuzberg. But this neighborhood, just so you guys know, was actually starting to be industrialized really in like the mid-1800s. This is interesting because this is kind of what happens in other parts. For example, in New York, we've covered places like Soho and neighborhoods that got industrialized in the mid-1800s, but then the industry kind of left, which left the neighborhood a little run down. But back then in the late 1800s, all that time, there was actually a lot of Jewish people here, Ashkenazi Jews specifically, and they inhabited this neighborhood. Interestingly enough, I guess later on, so you can see all the different little places here, little grills and kebab, Gemüse kebab, vegetarian kebab. Ich mag keine Gemüse. I don't like vegetables. Right? Is that wrong, Lucy?
Yes, it's wrong. You're not like
Oh, okay. Well, anyways, when the Third Reich took power in 1933, this area took a big hit. In fact, Kristallnacht in 1938 happened on November 9th, actually, 1938, which is also, ironically, November 9th, 1989 was the day the wall came down. But on Kristallnacht, they came around and actually destroyed tons and tons of businesses, burnt one of the biggest synagogues in the city down to the ground. This whole neighborhood more recently, in like the 1960s, West Berlin made a push to get, they had labor shortages, and they made a push to bring workers from places like Turkey, specifically Turkey, and a lot of the Turkish came and settled here. A lot of them initially were just men because they couldn't bring their families, but then in the 1970s, a lot of those restrictions were relaxed so they could bring their families, and they did. And it became a very Turkish neighborhood, and you could see some of the different restaurants and little stands and stuff. A lot of the Döner, which we'll maybe try right now. Well, now we're here at Hasir restaurant. I was telling you that the Turks are the largest ethnic minority in all of Germany. Holy crap, I almost spilled that. It's hot. Anyways, I got myself a little Döner kebab, which I'm gonna eat now. I'm gonna try it, and you get to watch me eat it. Check it out. So this is like a really big, food here. You eat it, like, all the veggies fell out. I'm not gonna complain about that. That's good. Well, me and Lucie are gonna sit here and eat, and we're gonna go to the next stop. See you there. Okay, so we just got out of Hasir restaurant, had a nice little dinner, feeling nice and full, and we're gonna walk along Oranienstrasse. Pretty important street here in Kreuzberg. So let's go. Here to my right, before we even start, is a place called Cortex. This place has been around since the late 80s, a very important hardcore, punk, ska, like record shop. Pretty cool, it's been here for a bit, been like a real center of this area. So I was telling you that this neighborhood was kind of run down when the wall came down. This was actually like a slum of West Berlin, and also on the border of East Berlin. So people naturally moved to this area, especially artists, even when the wall was up, because they actually exempted you from military service by living here, because they knew people didn't want to live in West Berlin because it was surrounded by the pretty much the Soviet-supported East Germany, which made it very dangerous in the sense that if any violence ever went down in Germany, the Allies would have been swallowed up pretty quick by the Germans, the East Germans, as well as the Soviets that occupied East Germany. All right, so I wanted to show you guys something real quick. I wanted to show you guys this poster because this is pretty indicative of what we've been talking about. So this is a poster for so earlier today we were at Brandenburg Gate. You guys remember when we saw those things, they closed it off, we couldn't get through? Well, that was because they were going to do a march commemorating 20 years in Afghanistan for the German military. Interestingly enough, you have a poster here advertising a counter march, a protest against that time in Afghanistan, a protest against the military. Because we are in Kreuzberg, and this is traditionally a punk neighborhood, traditionally an anti-establishment neighborhood. We were talking about how punk music thrived here. Squatters were very prominent here. In fact, the building where Cortex is located was a squatted building. And also, you have, you had this kind of like, I guess, mentality that led to things like, for example, every 1st of May, you have the European Labor Day, and they have huge, like, I guess call them protests, but it was more like a gathering, and people would start light fires, and in the past there's been violence and problems, but it's always been centered here because this has kind of been the anti-establishment heart of Berlin in a way. So you have little posters like that, kind of cool. How was that, Lucie? Super gut? All right, let's keep moving then. And over here, directly in front of me, you have SO36. Right over there to the left, you can see it. That right there is pretty much kind of like the CBGB of Berlin. This is where like Iggy Pop, David Bowie, people like that used to come. It's been around since the 70s. Let's keep walking. We don't get hit by a car. They'll yell at you here for crossing the street without a crosswalk. Yeah, they're here for everything. That's true. This is it. You got a whole a list of all the stuff going on here. Goethe meets rap. I wonder what that's like. Faust rap, I guess. Anyways, this is SO36. All right, so I wanted to show you guys one more thing before we leave the neighborhood, and it's these right here. On the ground, you have what are called the Stolpersteine. These are a decentralized artistic memorial to the people who were killed in the Holocaust, the Jews killed in the Holocaust. So on each one of these, you have the name, birth date, and death date, as well as the place, like what concentration camp of the people who lived there. So they're all over Europe, in places like Amsterdam and Poland, and the idea is to kind of give you an idea of where these people lived before they had their, lives and taken away from them. The artist behind this, his name is Günter Demnig. and he's a German artist, and this is the largest decentralized memorial in the entire world. Pretty cool. A little dark, but cool. Anyways, with that, I think we can jump to the next stop, and the next stop is going to be also a little bit of history. So what do you think, Lucy? Should we do it?
Yeah.
Ja, sehr gut. All right. Hey, we're now in Friedrichshain, and we're actually next to the longest surviving section of the Berlin Wall. It's now called the East Side Gallery. It's a bunch of artists painted on it. Actually, right after the wall fell, they came and they painted here, and it's been restored and redone to kind of keep it looking nice, etc. And we're next to one of the more famous pieces. This piece is called My God, Help Me to Survive This Deadly Love by Dmitry Vrubel. And that's actually a famous photo from a 1975 meeting between Leonid Brezhnev and Erich Honecker, who was actually the head of the GDR. But that's a socialist fraternal kiss, it's called. That's actually what they used to do. All right, let's go. Gentrified a little bit in this area. We're also in Friedrichshain, which is right next to Kreuzberg, and it's actually home, as is Kreuzberg, to lots of nightclubs. In fact, the Berghain is right near here, which takes its name from Kreuzberg, and Friedrichshain, Berghain. Huh? It's right near here. It's like the most famous club in Europe. I think it was voted the best club in the world in like 2009. The like bouncer is a celebrity here. People started fleeing East Germany through West Berlin. They would go to West Berlin and then be sent to other parts of West Germany from there. Now, it was starting to cause kind of what they called a brain drain, right? So a lot of the young people, a lot of the educated people were leaving East Germany, and they were leaving in droves. Specifically, once 1961 started, it was happening in huge numbers. So because of that, the Soviet leadership under Walter Ulbricht decided to erect a wall, basically disallowing people to leave. This went up overnight on August 13th, 1961. And like I said, this piece here is still a surviving piece of the wall. They had to move it around and stuff like that because they started tearing it down, but it's now still an actual piece of the original wall, and it forms the East Side Gallery. Also, I want to show you guys this real quick too. Right on the other side here is a Mercedes-Benz Arena. Speaking of capitalism or whatever, that's a Mercedes-Benz Arena. Everyone knows Mercedes-Benz, German company based in Stuttgart, named after Carl Benz actually. And Mercedes was a brand of car that was introduced, was a kind of car introduced in 1901. Carl Benz comes on, Mercedes-Benz. Anyways, Mercedes was actually named after a guy, his daughter, one of the engineers. So I was telling you that the wall went up August 13th. It originally went up as pretty much like a barbed wire barrier, but then it had different phases introduced and eventually became two walls with what they called a death strip in the middle, and guard towers, dogs, all kinds of things meant to keep people from crossing. It was a total hellhole here. But like I said, in 1989, it came crashing down, and the reason was because there was so much pressure from people within East Germany as well as East Berlin to allow them to travel freely. Eventually that pressure became too much, and then on November 9th, at a press conference, one of the leadership of the party basically said, all right, you're free to travel between, no checks, and they didn't even really know what they were saying. It was very confusing, but people took it as a symbol and they just went to the wall and started crossing, and eventually just started tearing it down. Pretty cool. It was a pretty big, relief. But when the wall went up, it actually created like a huge issue. Obviously, people were very scared. They were very angry. People were torn apart, families, friends. And in 1963, actually, John F. Kennedy came and gave a speech. He gave a speech here, this famous Ich bin ein Berliner speech that he gave to actually make people feel better and kind of, I guess soothe them a little bit. And it was a huge uproar, and then a few months later he was actually assassinated. Well, once the wall was put up, very shortly after, a man named Peter Fechter, an 18-year-old, tried to cross, and he was scaling the wall and he was shot. A lot of people were shot and killed. I think it was like 100-something people in the history of the wall were shot or killed or died trying to cross, and people were trying to jump from buildings that were right on the border, and they would fall and die. It was a total mess. Peter Fechter was a young guy, and he was shot while he was trying to scale the wall, and he just died right there lying down, and everyone could hear his cries. The Americans didn't want to do anything because he was still on the east side, and they didn't want to get shot at. The East didn't want to do anything because they thought they were going to get shot, so he just died there, lying there, making noise and everything. Also, too, a famous one was Konrad Schumann. He was actually an East German soldier, an East Berlin soldier, who actually, when the wall went up, the barrier went up, he actually jumped. He did like a, just jumped and said, "I'm getting the hell out of here," and he jumped over and got into West Berlin. So there are all these different like crazy, happenings around that time. But then in 1989, like I said, it eventually came down. Big deal. It's probably hard to believe, You imagine like putting up a wall overnight on, Park Avenue or Fifth Avenue or something and dividing an entire city in two. That would kind of cause an uproar. Probably a big problem. All right, well, this is here, the East Side Gallery. It continues on over this way along the River Spree. And yeah, what do you think, Lucy? Should we move to our next spot?
Let's do it.
Cool. Oh, look at that. Made a little jump. I'm over here on Tauentzienstrasse, which is actually a street that leads over to Kurfürstendamm, which is one of the main drags here in West Berlin. We're in Charlottenburg. Really cool little area here in West Berlin. But that over there is the Kurfürstendamm, was kind of like the Champs-Élysées of West Berlin, with all the shopping, and during the Golden 20s, a lot of the clubs and things that people would hang out and everything. And over at the end there, you have a famous church. That is the Kaiser Wilhelm II Memorial Church. It was bombed in 1943 during the bombing of Berlin, and they kept the hollow kind of shell to remind people of that bombing and of the war here. They call it the Hohlerzahn, which is the hollow tooth, because it's a hollow thing, and I guess it looks like kind of like a tooth. I want to show you something at the end of this, I guess, little block here. Oh, this thing too, this is a giant sculpture. It stands for the things that humanity is capable of when we unite in peace and harmony. I actually don't know if that's true, I just made that up, but it could be. On the other side is what I wanted to show you though, something. It's a place called KaDeWe. It's Kaufhaus des Westens. It's actually a legendary department store here. It was opened in 1907 and was actually, the name was changed actually to disassociate it from its Jewish origins during World War II to Hertie, but today it's back to KaDeWe. And it's actually the second biggest department store in Europe behind Harrods in London. Kind of cool, but it always stood for the freedom that West Berlin had compared to East Berlin. This is where you could get like international goods and things. So people in East Berlin used to kind of dream of coming to this store and being able to see all the crazy cool things that they could buy. But like I said, there's a big shopping district. And then at the end you have the U-Bahn-Station, which stands for Untergrundbahn, right? Is that right? Untergrundbahn, that underground train. But anyways, I just wanted to show you guys this area. All right, so we've seen a lot of Berlin. We've seen and heard a lot of the history. We're now in Mitte, which is a neighborhood in the middle of Berlin. One of the cool things is that with all the history and all the things that have brought people to Berlin, there's a great cultural scene here. So I figure we go check out the cultural scene a bit and go to actually a comedy club here in English, believe it or not, and see what if I've learned something and if I can connect to the people here in Berlin.
The Berlin Marathon was like a couple weeks ago, right? Did anyone here? I don't know if anyone here ran in it. I didn't see anyone's nipples bleeding on the way in. I don't know about you guys, but every time someone tells me they ran a marathon, I always have two questions for them. How fast did you run it in? And who cares?
Guys, we made it through. We're all done here. We made it all the way through. We actually did go to Germany. Look at that. And no, I didn't shoot this outro and the intro at a different time from the actual video. It was all done in one fluid motion. I'm very professional. Lucy, what did you think of that walk, huh?
Wunderbar.
Pretty cool. We covered a lot of stuff, huh?
Du bist ein Berliner.
Ja, sehr geil. But guys, before we leave and we say goodbye, please check out the Patreon. It's a huge help. Gets all the, funding and stuff. Pretty cool. Help support. Some extras on there. Also, too, please like the video, subscribe. That helps bump in the old analytics. Gets me bumped above all the, high schooler slam dunks. Which are actually pretty cool. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. I'm here back at the Berlin Wall. Told you all about this. Pretty cool video. Excited to see what you guys think about it. I don't know. Lucy, did I miss anything? 9. Well, that was pretty krank, no?
Super krank.
Well, I guess that's it, guys. I don't know what to tell you other than we're done with this video. We did it. We made it to the end. So I guess I'll see you all later. Krank.